Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet again another video, part of InfoTrack TV. My name is Gerald Hoong, and we meet again in this video about what's new in SharePoint 2019. Now, for those of you who follow the Microsoft SharePoint products and technologies for some time, and I think those of you who are watching, who have actually attended many of my SharePoint trainings before, welcome back. And I think those of you who attended, you would know that I'm an all-rounder in Microsoft SharePoint technologies. I can train both the infrastructure part, the developer part, as well as the business intelligence as well. Now, please do take note that Microsoft SharePoint 2019, it's yet another update to its previous, I would say, backdated to two versions before, SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint 2016. This is yet another more anticipated release, and I think even without me trying to tell you guys what's going to be new, I guess a lot of you guys would have anticipated that pretty much what is more obvious, what is visually new to Office, this SharePoint 2019 would be, of course, the new user experience enhancements. Now, of course, what you have actually seen from previous version SharePoint 2016, they are looking closer and closer to the SharePoint Online from Office 365. And of course, today in SharePoint 2019, it is exactly identical to the same user experience that you see in SharePoint Online. So let me just try to break it down a little bit about what's going to be there in SharePoint 2019. So this on-premise version of SharePoint 2019 will share the same SharePoint home user interface that those of you who are familiar with SharePoint Online, you would get that particular same home page for SharePoint. And of course, all the new modern experiences for both team sites and communication sites available on SharePoint Online, you get the same web template in SharePoint 2019. And having said so, the modern team sites and communication sites, inside the team sites as well as the communication sites, of course, the lists and libraries, the main actual content of your SharePoint gets a fresh modern appearance as well. So all the new modern features of SharePoint Online is now propagated into SharePoint 2019. So gone were the days when in SharePoint 2013 and 2016 where you see the ribbons on top of your sites as well as the list and library interfaces. Now they're all moved away. So everything would be based exactly like what you have in SharePoint Online. And of course, integral part of the Office 365 would be the app launcher. So you get the same app launcher in SharePoint 2019. Well, of course, in Office 365, the app launcher, which is a top left-hand corner button, which when you click, of course, it gives you a shortcut to bring you to other apps and services on Office 365. But now in SharePoint 2019, the app launcher merely showcases those apps that you built, that it comes together with your SharePoint 2019 only. And of course, the sharing experience has been thoroughly simplified in SharePoint 2019. They use the same Office 365 lookalike sharing experiences, right? Whereby it's a one-click experience of sharing a document or an item, right? Or even maybe a list or library. Now, of course, exciting news would be prior to SharePoint 2019, I'm referring to the older SharePoint 2013 or 2016. Now, if you want to share your SharePoint site to an outsider out of your organization, of course, it literally is like almost impossible because you need to grant them a license, right? Grant that user a license to your SharePoint. But right now, they are actually giving you a way of how you share a guest user from outside of your organization to your SharePoint Online in Office 365. The same level kind of experience, giving you much greater extension, right, to outside of your organization to access your internal SharePoint 2019 sites. And of course, there is an improved OneDrive integration with a newly improved OneDrive sync client. They call it as the NGSC, which is a new generation sync client, so that improves and make it simplified for you to share things and monitor whatever documents you have in your OneDrive for business, right, with the OneDrive integration to your SharePoint 2019. And of course, workflows in SharePoint is here to stay, even though a lot of people would thought that Microsoft Flow would have thoroughly replaced everything about SharePoint workflows. But apparently Microsoft actually introduced the Workflow Manager 2019, which actually replaces the previous Workflow Manager 1.0. So that means SharePoint Workflow is still here to stay, whereby you can author new workflows using your SharePoint Designer. So this is actually, well, great news for people who are migrating their skill set from the previous SharePoint 2016 and they are still pretty much confused or they're reluctant to move on to the Microsoft Flow. Now speaking of that, right, SharePoint 2019 has full extensive support and integration with Power Apps and Flow, in which Power Apps is the replacement to InfoPath Forms, and Flow, of course, is a new breed of a workflow designing experience. So if you're familiar with SharePoint Online on Office 365, where you use Power Apps and Flow to build or customize forms in your SharePoint, as well as building workflows directly, now you can actually adopt that easily in your SharePoint 2019 as well. And of course, for a hybrid environment between your on-premise SharePoint 2019 with SharePoint Online, now they have a new hybrid status bar that allows you to monitor all configuration and health on your hybrid environments, right? So this is actually a quick glance of what is the current metrics on the performance of your hybrid environment. And there's a new holistic search allowing you to have an improved and quick way of searching through content that spans across your SharePoint on-premise in 2019 over to your SharePoint Online on Office 365. So there's a new holistic search capabilities built into that. Well, pretty much a lot of things expected in SharePoint 2019. Of course, they mirror what you get in your SharePoint Online for Office 365. And as for SharePoint developers, now in terms of training, right, I bet some of you guys may be wondering what happened to the training courses for SharePoint developers. Now it has been quiet for the past 1-2 years, but now SharePoint, Microsoft has released the new SPFX, which is called SharePoint Framework. And there's only one course that allows and open up again the window for or opportunity for SharePoint developers, right, to step into the new world of SharePoint development on either SharePoint Online or your SharePoint 2016 or 2019. So this is called SharePoint Framework. And today, SharePoint Framework no longer has the same requirement as the previous versions of SharePoint, where you need to be familiar with the .NET framework and you need to use C# language as the only way to develop solutions or web parts for your SharePoint. So SharePoint Framework today is open source. So for those of you who knows that Microsoft has already stepped into the world of open source a couple of years back, so right now SharePoint Framework is built on top of a completely open source framework and a completely open source platform where we use NPM, Node.js, Gulp, Yeoman, these are all the open source tools for you to create client-side web parts running on SharePoint Online or your SharePoint 2019. And of course the language involved is actually TypeScript, right, which is the mother of JavaScript. So please do inquire more on any one of the InfoTrack salesperson about the course for SharePoint Framework. So there you have it, okay? A quick run through about what's new and what to be expected in SharePoint 2019. And well, there you go. For those of you who plan to upgrade yourself into the new SharePoint 2019, there's only a course with the code MS 300 series that covers SharePoint 2019, but pretty much they cover about hybrid as well. So you need to prepare yourself with the knowledge about what is on-premise SharePoint compared to your SharePoint Online on Office 365. So until the next video, I'll see you guys soon. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon. Goodbye.